Chapter 20 is called Day at the Museum. The twins walked through the metal detector, looking all around for anything suspicious. The security guard peered into Coke's backpack for a moment, looked at Coke, rolled her eyes, and waved him through. She had seen people try to bring drugs, alcohol, explosives, and even live animals into the museum. Now, this kid had a can of silly string, a roll of duct tape, and little bars of soap. Nothing surprised her anymore. There was no line. There was no other line, no tickets to be picked up, no admission. The Museum of American History, like all of the Smithsonian museums, are free. Coke and Pep rushed inside. Pep checked the clock on her cell phone. It was 1:46. In 14 minutes, something was going to happen. The question was what? I hope Maya and Bones show up, Coke said. They'll be here, Pep assured him. They promised to have our backs. Look, Coke shouted, pointing straight ahead. On the opposite side of the museum, nearly filling the wall, was a sculpture made of hundreds of shiny silver panels arranged in the shape of a waving flag. Below it were these words: the Star Spangled Banner, the flag that inspired the national anthem. This way, Coke said, marching toward it. The entrance to the Star Spangled Banner room was below the silver sculpture. On the right, the twins went through the doorway, not knowing what might be around the corner. When we think of the Star Spangled Banner, we think of the song, Oh, Say, Can You See? But the Star Spangled Banner is a banner, it's the flag of the United States. Coke and Pep walked hesitantly into a dark hallway with paintings on the wall and plaques describing how Francis Scott Key, on a boat a few miles from Baltimore Harbor, watched by the dawn's early light the British bombarding Baltimore's Fort McHenry on September 13th, 1814. The attack lasted 25 hours, and explosions illuminated the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air, a huge American flag, which inspired Key to write the lyrics to his famous song. The twins turned the corner into an even darker room. Aside from a dim line of guide light on the floor, the only thing they could see in the room was the flag, the real one. The Star Spangled Banner had inspired Francis Scott Key. It was kept in near darkness to prevent it from fading. Wow, Coke whispered. This is the real deal. It was the largest flag either of them had ever seen. 30 by 34 feet, and 8 more feet on the right side was missing because souvenir hunters had cut off pieces over the years. One of the 15 stars had been snipped out too. Now the flag was under glass, laid on a tilted floor with the lyrics to the Star Spangled Banner on the wall behind it in white glowing letters. Do you think somebody is supposed to meet us here? In here, Pep asked. I can't see anybody. I can barely see my hand in front of my face, Coke replied. Let's get out of here, Pep said. It's scary. But Coke did see one other thing in the dark room, a piece of paper on the floor in front of the display case. He stood down and picked it up. The twins rushed out the opposite side of the dark room so they could read it. Greensboro lunch counter, Pep shouted. They dashed out of the Star Spangled Banner exhibit and looked to the right. Down the hall was a sculpture of George Washington wrapped in cloth and holding one hand up in the air. They looked down the hall to the left to see a lunch counter. This way, Coke said, and they ran over there. It was a pretty ordinary looking counter with two pink and two green stools, but history was made at that lunch counter. It was at Woolsworth store in Greensboro, North Carolina. Back in 1960, only white people were allowed to eat in the store. But on February 1st of that year, four black college students sat down and asked to be served. When they were told to leave, they refused. They came back the next day too, and with more students from the university. Word got around, and soon black students in 54 cities were holding sit ins at segregated lunch counters all over the country. That drew media attention, and within 6 months, Woolworths and other stores had opened their lunch counters to anyone who wanted to eat there. It would be another 4 years until the Civil Rights Act was passed, ending segregation in public accommodations and employment. The twins looked all over for a clue, telling them what they were supposed to do or who they were supposed to see at the lunch counter. A few tourists with cameras were milling around, but they seemed harmless. Nothing really captured the twins' attention until Coke spotted another note. This one was taped to the bottom of the glass in front of the lunch counter. He peeled it off and read it. WBUAOHYY. John Bull, Pep yelled. The train! They ran over to a little booth nearby with a short gray haired lady sitting behind it. A sign next to the booth said, Ask me. Where's John Bull? Pep asked breathlessly. Downstairs, the lady said, pointing. When you get to the lower level, look to the right. Can't miss it. Thanks, Pep said, already on the run. "What's your rush?" the lady said. "My goodness, that old train has been sitting there for years. It's not like it's about to leave the station." The twins thanked her and ran down the stairs. Surely enough, when they got to the bottom and looked to the right, uh, a big old-time train was sitting there, and its smokestack almost touching the ceiling. John Bull was one of the first steam locomotives in America. The plaque in front of it said the train was imported from England in 1831 and used to move freight and passengers between New York and Philadelphia. Back in those days, it took 2 days to make that trip by horse and buggy. John Bull reduced it to 5 hours, which was considered amazing at the time. But Coke and Pep weren't interested in the history of rail travel in America. They were interested in who had sent them all those ciphers and what was going to happen at 2 o'clock, which was now just 5 minutes away. They searched all over the John Bull until Coke noticed another piece of paper. This one was at the top tip of the big iron cow catcher in the front of the train. He picked it off and peered over his shoulder as he looked at it. Dmohfynehnubtleiglat. Dumbo the Flying Elephant, Pep yelled first. Directly behind the John Bull on the wall was a directory of the museum's 3 floors. The twins searched frantically for the word Dumbo. It wasn't there, but the directory showed a little icon on the third floor that looked like an elephant. That must be Dumbo, Pep yelled. Follow me, Coke said. There was an escalator right behind the John Bull. The twins dashed up it, taking 2 steps at a time. They went as high as the escalator would go. At the top, they looked all around until Pep spotted a 3 West sign on the other side of the museum. They ran over there, and the first thing they saw at the end of the hallway was Dumbo. It was part of a kiddie ride, a a shiny gray fiberglass elephant car with room for 2 small children to sit inside. Dumbo wore a purple hat and a white ruffled collar around his neck. The plaque in front of it said the ride had been inspired by the 1941 animated film Dumbo and began operating at Disneyland soon after the park opened in 1955. Riders could make it fly up or down by moving the bar in front of them. Now what? Coke asked, looking around desperately. It was 1:58. Time was running out. There was a low glass wall surrounding Dumbo to prevent visitors from climbing on it. The twins couldn't examine Dumbo, but in the back, at the bottom of the glass wall, Pep found another note. Follow Dumbo's trunk. It's another cipher, Coke asked. Is it a cipher? Coke asked. No, Pep replied. We're supposed to follow the trunk. Hurry. Dumbo's trunk was pointed at a slight angle to the left. There was a small gallery about 25 paces away, titled Treasures of Popular Culture. Coke and Pep ran over there, and the first thing they saw in the gallery, inside a glass display, was this. It's Dorothy's slippers, Pep exclaimed. The real ones! The twins pressed their noses against the glass to get a better look at the sequin shoes. The plaque explained that Judy Garland, who was just 16 at the time, wore these sequin shoes, size 5, in the movie The Wizard of Oz. In the original story by L. Frank Baum, Dorothy's slippers were silver. They were changed to ruby red for the movie so they would show up better against the yellow brick road. Well, that's all of them, Pep said, throwing up her hands. That's all the clues. It's 2 o'clock, Coke said. Nothing's happened. Nothing happened. No, nobody's here. After all that, maybe we made a mistake somewhere. Do you think it was all a big hoax? Pep asked. Maybe they were just playing with our heads the whole time. Nothing was going to happen on July 3rd at 2 o'clock. Maybe Maya was right, said Coke. Maybe it's going to happen on July 4th. Both of the twins were relieved. In a way, neither of them particularly wanted to confront the unknown. Hey, look, there's Kermit, the Pep said, turning around to look at the rest of the exhibit. At that moment, 5 guys dressed head to toe in black SWAT uniforms came running out of nowhere.